Hi, in this video I'm going to cover drawing trees with cross contour and a bit of gesture drawing to begin. So in this drawing I started with a really light, loose gesture drawing, and you can see the marks. They're a little bit sketchy, kind of going throughout. I'm not erasing all of those marks because it's part of the backbone of my drawing. And gesture drawing is a really great way to really find how something sits in space quickly, just by responding to what you're looking at, not thinking about it, just really seeing your subject matter and seeing how the angles are, looking at negative spaces, curves, things like that. So that's your first take when you start drawing, is you look at something, how does it feel? How does it bend? How straight is it? I'm using my little mock-up tree because right now I'm in Southern California and it is somewhere around 110 degrees where I'm at. So I'm not sitting outside drawing, but I have this, and I just put it up and I'm drawing from this to get my gesture really fast. And when I gesture, one thing that you can do, especially with something that has a lot of curves like this does, so many curves. Curves can be difficult to get down without feeling really wiggly and not really structural. You can start with some straight lines, thinking of it like sculpture, and boxing it in, and then kind of carving in from those edges and those lines and finding the curves as you build up your gesture. A gesture drawing should be done really light as you started drawing. So I was working with a 2B graphite pencil. If you have a heavy hand, I would suggest using an HB or even a 2H to get started. And then as you build up your line quality, you can start going into the higher numbers, like a 2B and a 4B, because the higher the number in a B series of any pencil or charcoal pencil means it's a softer lead, therefore it goes on a little bit darker, so you don't have to press into your page so much and ruin the surface of your paper by really pressing in to get those darks. Beyond that, you want to find the volume. So one way to do that is using a technique called cross contour, and all that is finding contours across the surface. So contour line is finding the edges and the thicks and thins, depending on light and shadow, where things recess away from light and where they flare out into the light, things like that. But cross contour is, after you've done that, now you're moving into the whole volume of the piece and what's happening as your eye travels around. So how round is it? Is there flat areas and then round? It basically captures those little details. There are horizontal and vertical cross contour lines. In trees and a lot of nature, you'll see lines already existing, like in this piece of wood that I have. All of these cracks, and you can see lines going around the knots of the branch where other branches came out. Those are what would be considered vertical cross contour lines. And then the ones that go across the surface are the horizontal ones. Wood and trees are really great subject matter to study line and to really look at what's happening as it goes, the length of something and how things wrap around. These would be my verticals, and I would draw my line according to how I actually see it. And then the cross contour describes your dips and valleys, so to speak. So if I was coming around with an ellipse, because this is round, that perfect ellipse would then contain some maybe flattened areas and then round out again, but it would essentially have a full ellipse going around. So getting into this, when I'm working and I'm thinking about light and shadow, where things are maybe away from light, imagining maybe my light is in this direction, hitting here. Anything on this side would be away from light, so it would be more in shadow and really tucked away. So this side of the contour might go darker. Where it really tucks away, it'll go even darker. Notice I'm still gesture drawing. I'm not tightening up my line too much. I'm working from my shoulder, keeping it loose. Anything away from light, go a little bit darker. Areas that flare out a little bit might catch some light, so they could go lighter. What you don't want to do is stop, start, stop, start. You want to taper your line from dark to light, dark to light. And that takes practice. It's basically all in how you handle your pencil and the weight. So one way to do that is hold your pencil a little bit further back, not like, you know, when you're doing penmanship. If you hold it a little bit farther back, you'll keep your lines moving, you'll have more wrist movement, and you can kind of work your way around those curves just to keep your whole drawing loose. In areas where I'm hitting light more, I'll go lighter in my line. I'm keeping it really light and sketchy. And then same thing with the side. And I might start going in and finding the curves according to my tree and how I'm seeing it. And I get those outer contours kind of finish, and maybe some more obvious inner sections like these knots and the lines that are going around there. This has built-in contour line everywhere, just following my eyes. And that's what I would draw for verticals. Just really look. If you have something that doesn't have line in it, you would do the same thing. It's like running your finger and feeling out the whole length of it. And same thing going across. What is it doing? I have a flat spot here, and then it rounds out. So the way I describe that with cross contour in here is I'm coming down, and then I want to come in, because I'm imagining this whole thing is round and I have a full ellipse. And I'm looking down on it a little bit. So this forward part of the ellipse would be going down, like looking into the whole trunk. And then this part, if it's flat, I would just go a little straighter, and then I would swoop it up to bring out the roundness. This really explains it here. Same thing. I like to come down the side of my contours and then bring it in. Instead of starting one side and ending here, I like to feel the whole volume. So I'm going to come in, maybe even recessed a little bit so it dips in a little bit, and then it comes back around, and then come to the other side. And just pull it up into the other side instead of just stopping it dead. You can imagine, like, if you saw all the way through, like the tree's invisible, what would that look like? Maybe something like that. So ellipses, one thing you can do is really just practice them on a whole sheet of paper. Practice them closed, practice them more open, just lots of ellipses. It's a really great practice. When you are looking down into something, it is essentially, take this tape, I'm looking into something. So this forward part of the ellipse would dip down. If I'm looking, say my eye level was somewhere in here, I'm looking down, so this part of the ellipse would go down. As I go up, you have a choice. You can kind of keep them all in the same direction, but then as you start getting really high up and you're looking up and things are maybe moving away from you, those ellipses can change direction, and it will help you draw in a way that makes it look like things are moving away or you're looking up at it. So these would be going more in this direction. And again, you can practice as if you're drawing all the way through. You don't actually have to draw it, but finding that forward part, I like to just come in, draw across the surface, really see what's happening. If it's really around here and then it's flat, I'll flatten it out and then I'll tuck it back under. If it's really round, like right in here, I'll keep it really nice and round. But again, I am looking for clues. I have one right there. And then I'm going off of that. So if my cross contour this way is going this way, I'm going to use these going this way, and then I have the direction of my eye movement going this way. And you can do that, you know, going all the way up. You don't need to do a whole bunch. Some like to do many, many lines. It's not necessary to really describe form, I don't think. Don't just stop it, let it carry through. If you have light and shadow, the light side, your lines can all be light, almost barely there, and then as it drops into shadow, they can get darker to match up that contour line on that side. That will give you more volume dealing with light and dark. So I would just do something like that. Same thing here. We're down here. I'm tucked a little bit because as this bends, light is hitting here, but not so much down here. So maybe these are darker from side to side. The next thing is dealing with the smaller details. So if you have fast eye movement, your lines can be maybe farther apart unless you've got areas of tighter detail like knots. Try and find what is actually happening. So I have these lines all coming around this knot. So you're not going to just draw circles around it. Follow the contours, which means, what is it doing? What does that look like? How does your eye move through that shape? And try and find that. And that would be enough information to describe that area. And if you see darker line, see bigger cracks, those can be described with a little bit thicker line. And something like this that tapers, carry it all the way through. Again, don't just stop it. Let it carry through your form. Tighter details, like in here, where things turn abruptly. Your eye has to slow down, right? We don't just, this whole length, it's a little bit faster, not too fast though, because it has some nice curves, but when something branches off and it's a tight turn, your eye slows down. So where it slows down, you can pull in more detail in that area by just doing some more line. And that also describes that it's a slow area to look at. There's more to take in, and then it can get spread out a little bit more like I'm doing here. And then it can expand out. Like I said, you don't have to do this like a grid pattern kind of thing, because that's kind of not really doing anything to describe your form. Where areas maybe overlap, like this edge, you can see it, it's right in here. And the way that I'm seeing it as I was drawing it, this feels like it's coming front of here. So I might describe it like that, and like that, as it's coming down. So one other thing, if I have a branch, let me just do a tree. Make some limbs here. So if I have, so the main trunk, and I have a branch coming in front of this part, in this overlap area, darken up your line a little bit in that area because it will pull it forward, because we see those lines as if they're closer. If you're dealing with light and shadow, you have to make a judgment call, like what side feels darker, but just make sure this is a little bit darker than this area here, and it will definitely pull that forward. And then again, you don't have to stop it dead. Maybe it goes up like that, maybe it carries down, you can fade it out, that kind of thing. And that is about it. Practice ellipses, practice drawing them, going through the form. Remember, things that move away from you, your lips can go in a different direction to pull it away from you, just like I would do here. If this were reaching out and it was suddenly coming back towards me, it might change direction again. I can use ends like this to describe my form, and I would pull that into these areas. They should never be just like straight across or really kind of flat, unless you have a very flat area. And this is a good way to just really see the volume, and it's also a really good setup for cross-hatching and hatching, which is dealing with light and shadow value and coming across a form the same way you would with cross contour to build up value. We're not doing that, so this is just simple cross contour, looking for peaks and valleys, different details, thick and thin line, things like that. So I collect wood because I do these really fun mosaic pieces with stone and wood. So I have beautiful pieces. So you can see here, the line's already there. Just as your eye travels, do the same thing in your drawing. Even when you're sketching, let that gesture drawing last. Don't jump straight into cross contour. Just try and find what's already there. That could be your sole description. You don't have to go in both directions, horizontal and vertical. You can go in one, just across the whole thing. This is telling me that this dips down, comes back up, and then down, things like that. Same thing here. Let the line that's already there help you and guide you in your drawing of trees or branches or any type of driftwood or something like that. These are all from different sources. Something like this, I would draw the lines that I see as I see them. The thicker, tapering, and I have some shadow, and then it would just fade out and then pick up on this edge. Outer contour, what direction does it go in? You have, it's so obvious in this piece. Things like that. And then you have, if you want to challenge yourself, you can work with stuff like this. Starting something like this, just like the tree, it's finding the big shapes. So this is a very triangle shape, very much triangle shape. Block it in that way, and then go to the next bigger shapes or next smaller shapes. Block those in. You can start again with straight lines and then carve it out as if it were like a sculpture, finding negative spaces. What do the negative spaces look like? Those shapes are super important. What does that look like? What does this look like? What does this look like? What does this look like? Look at angles, the directions, just kind of feel it out and draw what you see. And then you go to the next smaller thing. You wouldn't want to, you could block it out and then you can maybe start and do modified contour and just do one whole area, finish it, and then move on. But I would only do that if I've blocked in like my bigger shapes and maybe some key points like about where is this and what does this curve look like. So I would gesture draw this for an extended period of time until it feels like what I'm drawing is actually what I'm seeing. So, and that's it. That's you're beginning to drawing trees, which is one of my favorite things to do. Hope you enjoyed the video.